Fancy meeting you here.
I'm Jill.
I'm Steph.
And we are
The
Bantering Banshees. We are going to shout out our sponsor, W Energy. Whether we're up late researching haunted asylums or editing in the witching hour, W keeps us going without the jitters or the crash. It's like getting a full night's sleep
And a drink.
in a drink. Smooth energy, zero crash, and all the focus we need to chase ghosts and drop new episodes. Thank you, W, for fueling the Banshees.
We couldn't do it without you.
If you would like to try Dubby, there's a code at the bottom of our description for 10% off, so you can feel invigorated with no crash or jitters too.
And enjoy the episode.
Bye! Why am I saying goodbye?
So on today's episode, I get to take you guys to a very special place that I grew up in and holds such a dear spot in my heart. I am taking you guys to a tiny town called Rowe, Massachusetts. R-O-W-E, Rowe, woo, Rowe, woo. That used to be one of our camp chants. I will get into that a little bit later. So Rowe, Massachusetts is a very small town in the Berkshires in Western Mass and currently has a population of just under 400.
Oh my god!
So when I say teeny tiny, I mean itty bitty living space. It is nestled in Franklin County, and it's literally on the border of like Massachusetts and Vermont. It's way up
so it's
there.
up there.
It is all the way up in the corner of the state. And I was telling you this earlier this week that it is a mountain. And there is no service on that mountain. And you don't get service until you go down one mountain and then go down another. And that's when you get service. It is, I mean, capital I isolation. So it was originally incorporated 1785, but the story of the actual town comes from a little bit earlier. It's known that people started settling in about 1760s, 1770s, so not like drastically earlier. But if you think about a time span,
still really far in time.
It's it's a big it's a time gap because it's like when people are like, 20 years ago, and you're like, oh my god, that was forever ago. It really wasn't that long ago. So it was incorporated into the state of Massachusetts, was recognized in 1785. Rowe Camp and Conference Center, which is the special place that I hold near and dear to my heart, was first established in the 1920s. So it's been there for a minute. And for decades, it's attracted seekers, thinkers, and creators from all over New England. So while Rowe might seem remote, it has quite a hub for new ideas and conversations for nearly a century.
Ooh.
Actually, no, definitely a century, because it's 2025. So they've been an active camp for over 100 years.
Dang.
Yes.
That's awesome.
I'm so proud. I love that place. It literally, in so many ways, shaped who I am. Oh my god, I freaking loved it. So what is Rowe like today? Today, Rowe Camp Rowe the town, which is still very small, is quiet and peaceful and very nature oriented.
Oh, I love that.
It's pretty much like if you live in the town, you understand like you're gonna compost, you're gonna do like your own farming, and it's
you're gonna live off the grid, basically.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. They have landlines.
Oh my god,
that's like all they have.
It's really just tin cans with a string.
Practically, literally, it's so crazy because like you drive through the town and it's like, oh, beautiful woods, winding roads, house, woods, more beautiful, a stream, house. It's there's no like, oh, what's the word? Now I'm the one who can't, there's no layout. There's
Oh,
no like
oh, oh.
town layout.
Yeah.
It's like,
where you just felt like putting a house right here.
Exactly.
And then 4 miles down the road, we'll put another house.
Exactly. It is a haven for artists and off-the-grid types and folks looking to escape the fast-paced life that we live today. But it also, my favorite part, has a very spooky, ooky side to it.
Ooh.
So I am super proud and very excited to tell you guys the tale of the Purple Bishop, which comes from, it's a tale that is told at Rowe Camp and has been told at Rowe Camp for decades.
Oh, I love that.
Because I went on a little deep dive on Reddit, which I never do because I usually don't understand Reddit. I don't understand the people who know how to work Reddit. It's a different world out there. I found quite a few former campers who, from dating all the way back in the 70s, still recounted like the story, remembered it being told, remember it, key points of it to this day. So it's got a big history behind it. So we're going to go through the history. And then at the end, we do have a couple accounts.
Oh, I love this.
So this is the story of the Purple Bishop. And it starts with a quote from Cotton Mather, who was one of the pastors, ministers of this chapel that we'll be talking about.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you could get that from the Purple Bishop part of this, but there are chapel references to this. It is not a religion heavy episode. It's a tale. Stick with me. But whatever this history be, it aims at the doing of good as well as the telling of truth. And if its aim shall be attained, this will be a sufficient reward for all of the trouble of writing it. Cotton Mather, quoted in the History of Rowe, Massachusetts, by Percy Whitting Brown Forward.
That is quite the wording.
Yeah, they were very wordy back then.
Oh my gosh.
Very wordy.
I would have stuttered through that whole thing.
I may have practiced. Okay. The Purple Bishop story has been told for many a generation to campers at Rowe. It has been read and heard by many different people at different stages of their lives, and it means something different to each of us. The Purple Bishop story is essentially just a scary story. And in many ways, it is. As the often quoted H.P. Lovecraft line goes, the oldest and strongest emotion of humankind is fear. And the oldest and strongest kind of fear is fear of the unknown.
Ooh.
I was like, oh.
I need that tattooed on my body.
I read that and I was like, that resonates with us so deeply.
I love that.
We're not fearful of it, but it's the
unknown
question.
Of, yeah.
Yes. We love to be like, but why? How? What is the history?
What's behind the door?
What's behind the window? Or what's behind the mirror?
What's behind the mirror?
It's the window!
It's in the wall! It puts sweat down.
It's a colonial ghost! Oh my god. And there is much truth to this quote. Rowe Camp is a place where many have worked for decades to create a safe and stable environment for growth. But part of the growth is learning to face up to fears and learn how to wrestle with them in a healthy way. Thus, the story deals with death, drinking, and abuse, etc. There's some things. The Purple Bishop story is meant to scare and discomfort, but this should not be seen as an obstacle to safety or growth, but rather as a necessary part of it. And hopefully some enjoyment and thrills can be found along the way.
Okay.
Welcome to Purple Bishop Chapel.
Ooh.
So that is how it was introduced to us. At night, we would walk down the hill as a group, as a camp, and we would go to chapel. Mm-hmm. And we would go to this exact chapel. And not that there were sermons or anything being shared. Sometimes there were stories like this. Sometimes there was jokes being shared. Sometimes it was unconditional love chapel, which I explained that one to you. It was a very, the chapel itself was just a very special feeling place.
Oh, I like that.
I loved it. The tale of the Purple Bishop. Many of you have heard rumors, bits of stories, or even outright falsehoods about the man called the Purple Bishop. Tonight, you will hear the true chronicle of his life. There are many stories surrounding the rise and fall of the Purple Bishop, and while we do not have time to tell each story, tonight we have gathered what we believe to be the most important details from the Rowe archives. These hills hold many mysteries, and if you spend enough time here, you may experience one of your own.
Oh.
So in order to understand the Purple Bishop's life, we first start with the history of his family, who was one of the first settling families in the town of Rowe. As you enter the chapel tonight, and each night, you may have noticed there is a white engraved memorial on the left wall of the atrium. It's dedicated to the memory of a good man in a bad family. Preserved Smith. Excuse me. Preserved.
Oh, preserved.
Yeah, we're gonna have some names going here.
I see that.
Yeah, hang on. Preserved Smith. The first Smith to appear in the Rowe archives was his father, Cyrus. Cyrus Smith was born in the early 1700s. The archives don't reveal from where Cyrus came from, but it is recorded that he arrived at the Pelham Fort in 1753. Responding to a call for a chaplain, when the fortifications were abandoned, the next year, Cyrus settled in the small farming community of Rowe. There's a bunch of small towns that like kind of create this county.
Oh, okay.
And so it's like Rowe, Pelham, Davis, and they're all just kind of one in the same.
Kind of like Plainfield, Moose Up, Central Village. Okay. Gotcha.
Exactly. So Cyrus settled in Rowe. Although his arrival went mostly unnoticed among the locals, his departure would change the town forever. Cyrus quickly fell in love with the spirit of the settlers, and he reserved his true love for Annabelle, the daughter of a tanner, Richard Ellis.
It's quite the name.
Annabelle?
Mm-hmm.
I think it has a bit of a spooky ring to it. Oh, if they only knew. The land was covered in thick undergrowth, which settlers had only begun to clear a decade earlier. Rowe was then called Merrittfield by the town folk, so it wasn't even established as Rowe yet. It would not be incorporated for another 30 years.
Oh, wow.
So that's what I'm saying. Like, they showed up, but the town didn't become an actual part of the state for another 30 years.
That's crazy.
But if you think about it, how common it was back then for like these places to just start popping up and people living there for like 15 to 20 years. And then all of a sudden the state's like, oh shit, we haven't been out here in a minute. Like, we got some land.
This is Oz.
And, oh, you guys, okay. Oh, we'll put that on our map. Like, it's crazy how different things were. Rowe would not be incorporated for another 30 years and had not grown large enough to support a church or have a preacher. Cyrus, however, was a dedicated man of God, to each their own, and thus journeyed to Medon every Sunday to attend services. In the early 1950s, 1750s. I was
like, wow, that wasn't that long ago.
You were like, wow,
really jumped.
That history really went by.
Didn't the camp just start?
You're like, wait, so what happened to the story of the
bishop? So the bishop was there when you went?
I met him. We're good friends.
He's actually my buddy.
We text on a reg. In early 1756, Cyrus made up his mind that it was time that Rowe had a chapel of its own and resolved to oversee the process himself. It's believed that Cyrus had reckoned that Richard would be more likely to give his daughter's hand in marriage if there was an existing place of worship in Rowe. where the service could be held. The roads were increasingly safer, yet still most traveled long distances only when necessary. I can
see why.
I can see that. I'm gonna give you a pass there. So
Yeah.
that was a good way to try to get a girl. Be like, let me show her father I can make the town a better place. But did you? Cyrus and Peter Sibley. Sibley is also a name that is very recognized in camp. We have Old Sibley Cabin, which is rumored to be haunted. And then we just have Sibley Cabin, which is where the rest of the cabins are located.
So Old Sibley's all by itself?
Old Sibley is all by itself off the Commodore Trail, which leads to the nurse station.
Oh my God.
It's very creepy. It's very creepy.
Like,
I hope it's
the
still
short
there.
straw again.
I hope it's still there. It was there when I was at camp 15 years ago, so I can only pray it's still there. Cyrus and Peter Sibley, the local blacksmith, labored over the chapel through the spring and summer, building what is now referred to as Old Sibley.
Ooh.
In the spring of the following year, the new building was christened with the wedding of Annabelle Ellis and Cyrus Smith. In his wedding vow, Cyrus declared, "My beloved Annabelle, since I have found you, it is as though my world has begun anew. I was truly not alive before I saw your face. I can never lose you. I will never lose you."
Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah,
Men don't write like that anymore.
No, they don't. Having found his purpose, Cyrus settled down and devoted himself to preaching the word of God to the miners and other townsfolk, although he was never officially ordained. In 1759, Cyrus was blessed with a son, who he named Preserved. I don't think that name ever made my list.
I was never like, you know what? I want to preserve this name. Oh! That's what I'll name him.
We could do it by just naming him that.
He is preserved now.
Forever. Yeah.
We gather here today.
Knowledge. Oh, so unfortunately, Preserved had a very sickly childhood, and at the time when infant mortality was commonplace, it was a miracle that he survived what he went through as a young boy.
Oh, well, that's good.
Although he lacked physical strength, he was very bright. His teachers were impressed by his thirst for knowledge. Cyrus's sermons in those days were earnest and filled with love and compassion for God. Each parishioner felt as if Cyrus was speaking directly to them. Records list Sunday attendance as being well above the population of the town. So it seemed that the people from the surrounding countryside had flocked to Rowe in droves to hear Cyrus preach.
Which at that time, I'm sure, wasn't exactly a quick trek.
Well, yeah, kind
So
of like
that's
how
amazing.
he talked that, you know, he wanted to put a chapel there so there was, you know, there were safer streets and it was a better place and people didn't want to travel long distances. But back then, if you found a good preacher, you were going to stick with him.
Wow.
Yeah. And now we go to 1776. Do you know what happened in 1776?
Was it witches? No?
Revolutionary War.
Oh, yeah, that.
You're like, right. Not haunted history. Sometimes we weasel that in here.
So sorry to Brooklyn, Connecticut for not making me remember.
Yeah, sorry for my schooling that just totally screwed me in life. War with your neighbors was as common as taking a piss. Everybody was at war, like
It's so sad.
all time. Yeah.
Like, why was everyone so angry?
So I don't know if they were technically angry. I feel like there was just a huge lack of communication and a lot of people being like, well, this is mine, and others being like, well, cool, we can share, and then being like, no. And
I'm an Indian giver.
I
Wait, I don't think we use that word anymore.
don't think so.
I'm an American giver. Yeah, that kind of works.
That one kind of works. That one fits the time more. So when the Revolutionary War broke out in 1776, the 16-year-old Preserved, eager to prove himself to his father, wanted to join the fight for independence. 2 years later, Preserved returned home a changed man.
Oh.
He refused to talk about his service, but it was clear to his close friends that he had been deeply affected and that he had acquired a violent streak which could not quite be controlled. Seeking solace, discipline, and answers, Preserved left Rowe to attend the College of Rhode Island Seminary School.
Huh.
He was like, I am going to be a big guy.
Like, screw this small town crap.
Mm-hmm. He's like, I'm going to be a real bishop. In Preserved's third year at seminary, tragedy struck the Smith family. It was 1780, and the Revolutionary War was still going on in New England. Although Preserved was through with war, it seemed it was not through with him. As the story goes, a drunken contingent of soldiers marched rowdily into town, looting and vandalizing as they went, working themselves up into a bloodthirsty frenzy, eventually mounting an attack on the Smith household, firing their rifles and throwing bottles. While Cyrus managed to hide from the violence, his wife was not so lucky.
Oh, no.
The soldiers tarred and feathered Annabelle and left her to die in the road.
Oh, that's horrible.
Cyrus was trapped in his house and could do nothing but listen to the screams of pain as the boiling tar seared her flesh from her bones, burning her alive.
Oh my God.
And here's where Cyrus's sermons start changing a little bit.
Yeah, I can see why. Because all of a sudden you're like, God ain't fixing
His
this.
vow of, I cannot lose you, I will not lose you.
Oh no. Oh.
Preserved had been calmed by this time at the seminary and his faith reaffirmed. He returned home to the following winter. He barely recognized the man he found there as his father. Following the death of Annabelle, Cyrus had become cold and distant. His sermons, too, had changed and were filled with visions of the imminent arrival of the Antichrist and the eternal damnation awaiting sinners in the afterlife, portraying a God that was not loving, but vengeful.
Oh, so basically how I know him.
Correct.
Okay.
Preserved noticed that his father's messages of death and destruction were unpopular among the townsfolk, and soon Preserved took over his father's daytime services, once again proclaiming universal salvation to the congregation. With his morning services robbed of him, Cyrus began preaching at night to the random vagabonds and wayfarers that passed through the town with only one repeat patron, the darkness. It is at this point that reports begin showing up in the archives about strange occurrences and eerie organ music drifting through the hills.
Ooh.
In the summer of 1782, joy once again graced the halls of the chapel with the marriage of Grace Wells to Preserved Smith. Much to the people's relief, Cyrus deserted his chapel in order to spend more time poring over the tomes of his private library. Not even Preserved knew the contents of these books, but if he had listened hard enough when lying awake in bed at night, he could hear through the floorboards the muffled sounds of his father's chanting in strange tongue. Barely a year had passed when Grace gave birth to their first child, whom they decided to name Preserved. Let's let that name go.
Why would you want to preserve it again?
So now we have Preserved Senior and Preserved Junior.
Oh my God. No, it wasn't. No.
Yeah, no, that.
It's not even. No.
It's not. It's not. I knew you didn't even finish, but I agree. It's not even exactly. As an infant, Junior, I'm just going to refer to them as Junior and Senior.
That makes more sense.
Junior was sickly, very much like his father. Their friends thought the Smiths were truly blessed that Junior had survived. Very similar to the beliefs that surrounded his father when he was younger and survived. 2 years later, in 1785, Rowe was finally incorporated as a town. The townsfolk celebrated the occasion with a large festival at which Grace announced that she was once again pregnant.
Oh.
At the year's end, she gave birth to a healthy baby boy, Samuel. It soon became apparent that Samuel was strong in body and did not possess the same frailty that his father and brother did. Samuel was much unlike his brother, bold and brave, whereas Junior was quiet and circumspect.
What does that mean? Some of these words they used back in the day
It's
is
intense.
egregious.
Quality of being wary and unwilling to take risks.
Gotcha.
Okay.
So basically, he was a little bitch.
So Samuel was much unlike his brother, bold and brave, whereas Junior was quiet and a wuss. As they grew, the town came to recognize that of the two brothers, Samuel was the leader. Senior could not hide his preference for his youngest son. And I feel like we've had that brought up in the Lemp family.
Where they had a
he had a favorite.
And when that son passed away, he went berserk.
Despite the differences, these two brothers shared a genuine camaraderie. Samuel was always looking out for his brother and protecting him from the mean-spirited children. The two loved exploring the wilderness of the Berkshires together, and it was during one of these adventures that they stumbled upon the abandoned Davis mines. Samuel wanted to delve deeper, but Junior was too scared of the darkness, shocking, and decided to stay behind, awaiting his brother's return at the mouth of the cavern. Junior stood attentively at the entrance of the mine shaft, listening to the sound of his brother's bare feet slapping against the damp rocks faded into the darkness. Without warning, a loud crack echoed throughout the hills. Dust billowed out from the mine shaft. Preserve trembled, whispered, "Samuel? Samuel," into the darkness, but was met with no reply. Preserve stumbled home in shock. After several hours, he finally built up the courage to tell his father what had happened.
What?
Senior desperately called upon the neighbors to form a search party. It took 2 days of sorting through all of the rubble in the collapse shaft. On the 3rd day, they discovered the mangled and crushed remains among the timber and stone of Samuel's lifeless body. I definitely don't support waiting hours to tell your parents, and I kind of get, like, he knew he wasn't his dad's favorite. He knew this wasn't going to be taken well. However,
that's your brother.
If you have any love in your heart for your brother, you would have gotten help.
Especially since he's protected you your entire life.
Correct.
That he's been born.
Correct.
And you let him die. Oh, you're not just a wuss, you really are a bitch.
Yeah, you's a bitch. Senior, unable to control his white-hot rage, vented his fury on his remaining son. He beat Junior with his cane until the child's body was unrecognizable, a mess of blood and rags. Cyrus merely looked on in silence as Junior lay in bed for weeks. So Cyrus being his grandfather.
And Cyrus did nothing.
Nope.
Oh my God. What is wrong with this family?
Oh, it just gets worse. Finally, he was able to stand and walk, but his twisted, hunched posture, his slow, shuffling footsteps, and his heavy and irregular breathing never quite went away.
Oh.
When Junior was healthy enough, his father called him into the parlor. He instructed the boy that he was to take care of his grandfather, Cyrus. The terrified young Junior, as all he knew of Cyrus were the strange chants he heard coming from the attic room his grandfather kept, and the rumors banded about by the town gossip. That night, Junior brought up a tray of medicine and knocked timidly on Cyrus's door. He jumped back when a booming voice resonated from within the chamber. "Enter!" Be like, "No, that's okay. I'm just going to leave this here."
I'm just not going to come in.
I feel like, you know what? You don't look thirsty. We're good.
I'm thinking you're fine since you left me to be beaten.
Right. Since you were just a bystander for my bodily
Thanks,
mutilation.
Grandpa.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, old man.
Yeah.
Junior inched towards Cyrus, trying his hardest to avoid the old man's piercing eyes. Cyrus snatched the tray from him and tossed it aside. Sit, he obeyed. Your father hates you because you are weak. But, he intoned, a crooked smile breaking across his face, your father forgets that the meek shall inherit the earth. Preserve did not respond, but Cyrus did not seem to care. You may have heard stories about me, but now you shall hear the truth. From then on, Junior brought Cyrus his medicine. Senior thought that he was punishing the boy, but in reality, Junior was fascinated by his grandfather and the ancient tomes that filled his library.
Oh, I like this.
I knew it. In 1795, Senior was ordained Bishop of Hampshire County. All recognized him by his purple robes. He still continued to preach love and the inherent goodness of man, with church attendance remaining steady. It seemed to some people that Preserve was not as invested in his sermons as he was before the death of his beloved Samuel. Junior was one of the few locals that did not attend his father's services. Instead, he would spend hours listening to Cyrus's tale of fire and brimstone and the unimaginable suffering that awaited humanity. Junior also began to study his grandfather's books to find out when the end of days would occur, becoming well-versed in the rituals and rites of old occult traditions. It was a cloudy night, and Preserve Senior was away preaching in a town of Mendon. Just past midnight, Grace was awakened by the rusty creak of a door shutting. A series of agitated, rapid footsteps sounded through the floorboards above Grace's head. Sliding on her slippers, Grace tiptoed to the room and peeked out into the dark hallway. All was silent. Now remind you, Grace is Junior's wife. Grace returned to her bed. Suddenly, a shrill, horrible scream pierced the night, followed by a loud crash above. Grace leapt up and raced upstairs to find her father-in-law's door hanging off its hinges. Entering the room, she felt a bone-chilling breeze sweep by her. As the moon passed out of obscurity from behind the clouds, she reluctantly looked through the shattered window onto the front yard, gripped with terror. What she looked upon was a truly gruesome sight. Cyrus's limbs were all spread in different directions. His head lolled obscenely to the side, and what made Grace gasp was a sight of the freshly painted white picket protruding through Cyrus's chest. Grace ran to wake up Junior. Junior rose quickly and went into town to fetch the doctor and the sheriff. It wasn't long before the townspeople were gathered outside the Smith household. Word was sent to Senior, and he returned the next morning. Rumors spread that Senior had, in fact, not stayed in Mendon that night of the murder. They knew that Senior had hated his father and would have loved nothing more than to be rid of him. Although nobody could prove that Preserve had committed the heinous crime, people no longer felt comfortable with him serving as bishop. The Sibley Chapel had lain empty for only a short while when Junior announced his plan to follow in his father and grandfather's footsteps by becoming a minister. It was at a time of great prosperity for the town of Rowe. The mines were flourishing, merchants and laborers flocking to the town in hopes of making fortune, but Junior had nothing except contempt for these immoral men who gambled and drank their nights away. Twice a day, morning and night, Junior would tell of the coming final judgment. While few would attend his services, everybody heard his otherworldly yet beautiful organ playing. It didn't take long before his congregation grew, yet these new followers did not come to hear his lectures, but rather to enjoy the angelic and beautiful melodies that Junior drew from his organ's keys. Surviving fragments of the 1804 article describes a bar brawl that spilled out of Sylvester Nash's tavern and onto the street. At least 5 workers were killed and many others wounded. This seemed to have been the catalyst for Junior's rise to fame in Rowe. Starting with the miners' families, a religious revival swept through the town. Wives dragged their husbands to church in order to hear Preserve preach about the evils of alcohol and the everlasting rewards of temperance. Many leading citizens were caught up in this religious fever and appointed Junior the new bishop so that he could save the souls of godless men. His father passed down the purple robes to him. In the following years, attendance dwindled as people's religious passions faded. They grew tired of hearing the same doomsday predictions, and the old-timers longed for the sermons of Preserve Sr. Like his grandfather before him, Junior began to give his sermons solely at night. The organ music, that had sounded so pleasant during the day, now sent a chill down the spines of those walking in the dimly lit streets. It was a particularly humid summer night in 1810 when it happened. It was just after sunset, and the sky still had a purple hue to it. Heat lightning flashed through the hills. The air was damp and stifling. Preserve Jr. was once again in his chapel, raving fervently to the darkness. Suddenly, there came a great crash. Lightning struck the chapel, and the old wooden structure immediately caught fire. The townsfolk saw the smoke over the top of the trees and rushed to the scene, but were too slow. By the time they reached the chapel, the fire was too strong. In the morning, Grace and Preserve Sr. were forced to sift through the rubble to search for the remains for the second time. But this time, they were unable to find a body. All the remains of the chapel today are the stone foundation of what we call Old Sibley.
Wait, shut up. Shut up. Shut up. So you're telling me the chapel where he basically did Satanism and satanic rituals and played his creepy ass organ is where people now sleep?
It's where they once slept, yes.
Oh my God, I freaking love that. Oh, I want to draw the short straw.
Oh my God. I hope I get to take you here someday, because you'd freaking love it. The tragedy was too great for Senior and Grace. The couple left town soon afterwards and settled in Mendon. Not long after, in 1812, Rowe requested that Preserve Sr. return, for no other minister had been willing to accept the meager pay that was all the small town had to offer. Senior accepted. Upon returning to Rowe, Senior's lectures became wholesome and emotional once more, as he had finally found peace. In 1821, Senior formally converted to Unitarianism, and his congregation happily converted along with him. His last sermons were filled with messages about the grace of God and the goodness of man. He died in 1834, finally at peace. The inscription on his tombstone reads, "The memorial of virtue is immortal." This message was later copied onto a stained glass window that still sits in the chapel today. However, this was not the end of the Purple Bishop story. In fact, this is just the beginning. Ooh. The accounts that follow have been pieced together from newspaper articles, police reports, and personal accounts. In 1815, young Jonathan Abbott and his brother Ezra were walking through the woods of Pelham. They decided to take the Sibley Trail, which led past the site of the old chapel. The Journal of a Woodsman tells us that he heard a bone-chilling scream and saw a purple flash shoot across the sky. The people of Rowe organized a search party when Jonathan and Ezra did not return home. On the fourth day, they finally located Jonathan's body. The body was found far from the path, his fingernails dug deep into a tree. The back of his shirt was shredded. Deep, bloody gouges crisscrossed his back. On his face, there was an expression of pure horror. Not even the strongest miners were able to pry his fingers from the trunk. So to keep from sawing his hands off, to preserve the body for the funeral, they cut the tree down.
Oh my God, can you imagine going to witness this body to say your goodbyes and there's just a trunk being held up by hands?
It's when I die, I want to be mounted on a log with terror in my face.
It's like Scary Movie 3 when they go to see her and Brenda's like, ah!
Exactly. And I want all to come say goodbye to me looking like that.
What the heck?
Mm-hmm.
Just chop the hands off and close the door.
Just, yeah, it can be a closed casket,
Yeah.
guys. It's okay.
You don't need to see his face.
Nope. Not when it had a face of horror. No.
Oh my God.
No, I think I could skip that funeral. I'll just come to the reception afterwards to pay my condolences. Laura Wells was also an adventurous child, and she loved to explore the woods behind her house. One day, as the sun was going down, she told her mother that she was going to investigate a new path she had found. Telling her to be back by supper, Laura's mother let her go. When supper was ready, Laura's mother called for her daughter, but she never came. Laura's father went out looking for her. Despite knowing the woods like the back of his hand, he couldn't find the quote-unquote new path that Laura had spoke of. Dusk arrived, and as the setting sun glowed its last, he stumbled upon a clearing that he had never seen before. The ground covered in white and purple bellflowers. On the opposite edge of the field, he spotted a crumpled figure. He sprinted over to the body and looked into the lifeless eyes of his daughter. When a doctor performed the autopsy, he could find no definitive cause of death. There were no wounds or injuries of any kind. She was simply dead. Later generations of Wells honored her memory with a prayer on a stained glass window in the very chapel that reads, "At eve, there shall be light."
So sad.
And these are all from like 1800s. These are all accounts that were made in newspapers.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, they're not just like stories that have been passed down.
Right. Like these were real occurrences that actually happened.
To people, yes.
It wasn't like the game of telephone.
On an especially cold winter's day in 1881, Pardon Shaw, so we're still coming up with like great names.
Why?
Pardon.
We've got not Prudence. Preserve.
Prudence would have been acceptable. Where the fuck was that name?
No, Preserve.
Preserved. Prudence preserved. So we have Prudence, and now we have Pardon. Not of the same family,
Pardon?
but Pardon.
Excuse me.
I wonder if the name was actually Pardon.
Ooh.
Could be French.
Pardon.
Pardon, monsieur. No. Okay. On an especially cold winter's day in 1881, Pardon Shaw was laying in bed reading when the dead silence was shattered by a single petrifying shriek, echoing down from the mountains behind his cabin. The snow falling softly but steadily, Pardon set out up the mountain. Sir, why?
Like if you hear that,
If
why
you're
are
in
you
bed and you hear that,
You stay in bed.
we stay in bed, we put pillows over our head, and we act like nothing happened. We do not get out and go, I'm gonna go see what that was in the
No.
snow.
No.
No.
You just don't know.
It's in the winter of 1881. No,
No. Mm-mm.
absolutely not.
I wouldn't even do it now.
There's not as much snow though.
I just meant the tracking up while you're sleeping.
You're like, I just meant hiking.
I just meant like going outside.
Just like the nature part of it. I don't know if I would sign off for that, you know? Oh, after an hour or two of roaming around the woods, the sunlight glinting eerily off the snow, Pardon had found nothing and was about to return home. Just as he turned to walk down the mountain, an eerie, inhuman cry echoed through the woods. Pardon turned back once more and ran after the noise. No,
Why?
you run away from the noise.
Then.
We need to give you a pamphlet on how to survive because you are breaking all the fucking rules.
Every rule.
Every rule. Here, he's like, that one, I'm going. Like, yeah, well,
What was that?
and we'll see what happens to you. So Pardon went after the noise. Soon the slope evened off and Pardon arrived at the top of a steep incline. Near its base, a splash of red on the white snow caught his attention, and he cautiously walked toward the edge and peered over. What he came upon was a ghastly scene. A young woman laid dead, her face twisted in an unnatural display of terror. Dried blood running down from her eyes. She was later identified as 16-year-old Matilda Bodenhoff, who had been traveling alone through the Berkshires to reach her grandparents' farm. Because, remind you, it's 1881. So the police investigation stalled, for there were no marks of a struggle at the scene or any other indication of violence. And Matilda, seemed to have been in perfect health at the time of her death. I mean, she's a 16-year-old girl.
Yeah.
In 1800s.
It's basically like the exact same story. Like, what is going on?
The case was never solved, and exactly what happened that winter's day on the mountain, at the foot of which nearly 100 years later the rec hall would be built, remains unclear to this day.
Oh my God. So they're like, there's just been a couple deaths, but we're just going to build on top of it.
It's fine. There was like this body found here, like 100 years ago, but it was 100 years ago. Like, nothing.
Clearly, it's gone.
Still here, right? Wrong. Okay, another story. Oh, I do love this one. We are finally getting into the 1900s.
Oh, okay. Our times.
A young couple had decided to spend a romantic evening on Pelham Lake. And Pelham Lake is a lake that we as a camp will go to because there's no large water. So, like, there's no pools or anything at the camp.
Oh, okay.
So
you had to go to a lake.
We will walk down the hill past the chapel, and the lake is like maybe a quarter mile past that.
Oh my God.
Excited to escape from their parents, the pair was thrilled when they found the beach deserted. The next day, they still hadn't returned home. Without hesitation, their parents contacted the police. The police report stated that a set of footprints led away from the lake. Marks on the ground suggested that they were knocked down and dragged into the murky depths of the lake, clawing every inch of the way.
Oh my Lanta.
Decades passed, and the strange deaths and disappearances faded into memory. The townspeople soon forgot the story of the Purple Bishop. Preserve Smith Sr. was remembered as a great Unitarian preacher, while his son, Preserve Smith Jr., fell into obscurity. In 1907, a distant relative named Preserved built a new chapel. The chapel...
Stop naming people Preserved!
It's not an honor anymore. Like, it's not a family name we should be passing down.
No. And I'm so sorry if any of our listeners are named Preserved. I'm sorry your name is Preserved.
Seriously. Like, we can't help that. But, like, yell at your parents, you know? Preserved built a new chapel, the chapel that sits there today.
Oh, that's even more weird that not only was this guy named Preserved, but he built the chapel.
Mm-hmm. In their excavation of the scene, Preserve Jr.'s remains were discovered.
Shut up.
And it was deemed only fitting to incorporate his bones into the wall of the chapel so that his spirit may always surround and protect us.
What the fuck? What the
In the 1920s, the chapel was passed into the hands of the local Unitarian summer camp, Rowe Camp and Conference Center. So it is owned by the camp.
Have a haunted chapel.
Yeah, it's all about building character.
Oh my God.
Scaring the shit out of kids in a chapel and then making them walk back to the camp in the dark. Can I tell you how many times?
I would have shit my pants.
We all did. We all did. We would go down and we'd all be like, ooh, it's Purple Bishop Chapel. This is so exciting. Because there was always like the first time campers who hadn't heard the story yet. And so you were so excited. And it's just a fun, they get very theatrical. They play the organ. They drop somebody from the ceiling. Like, there's shit. They make it theatrical and kind of fun.
It's like a haunted house kind of atmosphere. Pretty much.
Then you get to walk back to camp in the fucking dark of the woods. And you're like, what was that? What was that? What was that? And so you've got like 50 campers and they're all I'm like, they do this to themselves every year.
Oh my
God. But I still love that they do it and they haven't like pulled back on it. I'm like, I fully support it. I love it. So a decade later, a co-director of the senior high camp began researching Rowe's history. So this was a decade after the camp opened or obtained the church in the 1920s. He was particularly interested by Preserve Smith's stained glass window. During World War II, the first Purple Bishop stories were told. Around this time, strange events began occurring in and near the camp. It started with campers seeing shadowy figures in the woods and hearing strange noises as they walked back from chapel. And I'm going to read 3 accounts that I have from people, from former campers. And I'm so excited. Okay. So the first one is from a former co-director of senior high camp. So we have the director and co-directors. They're the ones who are like in charge.
Mm-hmm.
Senior high camp, you're usually dealing with kids age, I believe it's 15 to 18. It's high school age kids. Camper A is a former co-director of senior high camp. One hot, muggy night when he was still just a camper of junior high, he and a friend were the first back from chapel. Camper A's friend continued to Henry Cabin, which is the highest cabin on the hill, as Camper A went down to Doyle Cabin. He passed out near the staff splits, which is tents that the staff stay in around the cabins. So like you're not.
So they don't even get cabins; they have tents.
Well, there's counselors that stay in the cabins with us, but then there's counselors that stay on the outside. So like
they can kind of hear everything that's going on.
They can hear if somebody gets up and is like walking around, they can be like, "The hell are you doing? Go back to bed."
Gotcha.
All that. So he passed out near the staff splits, apparently from heat exhaustion. As his counselor, Dan Ross, approached the porch of Doyle, he found all his campers huddled around something on the front steps. When he cleared them away, he found Camper A scared and disoriented with blood on his hands. However, when Dan took him to the splits and washed the blood away, they could find no cuts. To this day, Camper A has no idea how he got to the steps of Doyle or why his hands were covered in blood.
Oh my God.
Correct. The second story, this camper attended camp during the early 90s. One day she was walking down the Commodore, which is a path that runs from the rec hall to the orchard, and the orchard is where the nurses station is, but it's also the trail that Old Sibley is off of.
Oh, okay.
So she was walking down the Commodore, a path that she took often as it was the most beautiful way to the orchard, and it absolutely is. As she approached the place where the path splits, she noticed that the trees didn't seem as close together as she remembered. As she walked on past Old Sibley, she noticed that the vegetation looked sickly and dying. When she looked up, she found herself in a clearing that she had never seen before. When she turned around to get her bearings, she saw a little girl in a white dress sitting on a stump, picking petals off of a purple flower. In a state of panic, she ran blindly through the woods, eventually finding her way back to the rec hall. No one knew why she was crying hysterically on the back porch. It wasn't until 10 years later, when she returned to Rowe as a staffer, that she was able to tell her story. And our last shared story is a former staff member of both junior and senior high camp, and he rarely tells the story. When he does, it is with great reluctance. I was fortunate enough to hear him tell this story in person.
Ooh.
My first year at junior high camp. He was one of my favorite counselors. He's a very cool guy. And seeing him kind of transform when he was retelling this story, I was like, oh, like, you know, when you can tell somebody's just telling a story.
Yes.
And then somebody's reliving something.
Oh my, like their whole demeanor changes, their voice
their
changes.
Characteristics are, and that's what I saw.
Oh.
This former staff member rarely tells a story, and when he does, it is with great reluctance. During his tenure as a camper, a raid left his cabin encased in packing tape. We were pranksters. There were brother-sister cabins.
Mm-hmm.
You just tortured the shit out of each other.
Oh my god.
Oh yeah. Oh, it was ruthless. It was good old camp. Oh, I don't know if they still do that anymore, but it was awesome. His friends found it amusing to wrap him in it from head to toe so that he could only hop along about a foot at a time. Leaving him all alone, his friends headed to the rec for no curfew night. As he began hopping along the road after them, he reached a dark stretch between the crossroads and the rec hall. And if you know this camp, you know that dark stretch. There's just, it literally is a dark hill that leads up to rec hall. And the rec hall is so bright and open at the top. When you look up, you're like, oh, okay, just walk up this hill. But there is something about when you walk up this hill that's like, you feel like there is something either side of you in those woods watching you. It is so freaking eerie. And there's another trail that goes behind that same area. Same feeling. You always get the feeling that somebody is watching you.
Because they probably are.
Because they probably are. As he reached the dark stretch between the crossroads and the rec hall, he began to hear the laughter of a little girl coming from the woods. His unease grew as the laughter got louder and began to surround him on all sides. As he cleared the trees and reached the light of the front steps, the laughter suddenly stopped. Of course, you guys don't know it, but it really is like once you get past those trees,
you feel fine again.
You feel like you're safe. And mind you, the rec hall was built on the site that her body was found on. So it's not even like that should be a safe place, but it is. The rec hall feels safe.
I wonder why it's just the woods.
Area around it does not.
Oh my gosh.
The woods do not feel safe up there.
Although
Preserve Smith is dead, his story lives on. And you may be skeptical of what you've heard, but if you spend enough time in these woods, you will find the truth. Whether or not Preserve's malevolent spirit walks these woods, I cannot say for sure. Surely, though, when a place experiences so much hurt, that pain has a way of lingering on. As a camper of Rowe, you have now written yourselves into the story of the Purple Bishop. All I ask is that you respect these woods. There is more out there than just the wind blowing in the trees.
Oh, I just got goose pimples.
And that is my retelling of the Purple Bishop's story and my recounts of camp and Rowe, Massachusetts entirely.
Oh my God, I loved that. That was so good, Steph.
I was so excited to share that with you. I could not wait to record this. And I really hope you guys hear this episode and it sparks something in you to reconnect with nature and remember to respect our earth and always look behind you when you're in the woods.
Oh my God. I love that so much.
Thank you. All right. So that's everything for us, guys. Please and thank you.
Have a good one. We'll see
you next time.
Bye.